Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm here with my awesome buddy, Roy. That way. Let's hope I don't know where the recording's going to end up. Sometimes it ends up like that. Who knows? But Roy, I'm really excited that we're here. It's like coming full circle because I remember that day in 2014 where you advised me what to do, how to fire myself up to get ACP certified because I was having cold feet. Now, let me explain why I had cold feet. I sent in my application for the ACP exam. And when the PMI reviewed it, they said, no, this is not what we're looking for. So what if you coded? So what if you tested? So what if you did development work? That's not agile project management. What? I was so mad. I forgot about the application for almost a year. And then when you and I started trading that company in North Carolina, it came up again and I decided, okay, let me put my application in again. This time I actually did more project management stuff on the projects I was working as opposed to development work. And it was accepted, but I wasn't taking the exam until you gave me some advice, got me inspired, and then I ended up taking it and got certified in 2016. It took that long. It took almost a year after you'd been telling me about it. So I got certified, but I really didn't want to train anything regarding it, until here we are. Now we're training the ACP exam. So Roy, in your experience in training this, would you say it's a very hard exam? What are some of the things we should know right up front?
Yeah, so it's not an easy one. It's not absolutely an easy one, but if you have a PMP background, this is what a lot of my students have told me about this. If you have a PMP background, meaning you have taken PMI exams before, the format, the way that they phrase things, then it tends to be a lot easier. As long as you've got a little bit of Agile experience behind you, you've done some practice, certainly have been through our classes, it's not going to be nearly as difficult as the PMP. There are fewer questions, it's shorter, it's easier than the PMP. So I wouldn't worry about it too much, but don't let that get to your head, right? Get in there, study, make sure you're prepared for this because you know how the PMI is. They put some fun questions in there sometimes, and it can
they do. Indeed. Great, Roy. Well, let's jump into what we have for our friends here. So going straight to our first slides of intros, we all know who Roy is because he's done his intro, and so have I, and so has everyone else. And we want you folks who are watching to be interactive. So get the chat going. If you have an aha moment, feel free, fire up the chat, let it go. If there are any concerns that you have about this exam, we want you to share them as well. Our ground rules are just be on mute as much as possible. We encourage you to just be aware because if Roy and I get bumped off, you could become a co-presenter. Hopefully that won't happen. We'll take 5-minute breaks at the top of every hour. And the most important thing is to ask what you don't know. Now, here's a question for you. And the question is a yes or no question. Do you already use Agile? Yes or no? Three, two, and one. Let's end the poll. Let's share the results. Okay, very good. So Roy, what advice do we have for our friends if they don't already use Agile? How hard is it to use?
It's actually really easy as long as you let go of some of the traditional waterfall, define everything up front. You can do Agile very quickly. You could do it even in your personal life. I know I do. I know it sounds geeky, but I do actually use Agile in my personal life. I have my personal Kanban board and I practice it. So start that way. Start simple. Build a board, throw some sticky notes up there, or use some of the tools that are free online, and just start feeling it. And your personal life, you'll start getting things more organized. It's actually not that difficult to get started. And too, Phil, how hard was it for you?
It wasn't hard. Actually, meeting and working with you, Roy, I mean, you evangelized everyone about this whole Kanban thing. So I became a follower right back in 2014. The moment you called it to my attention. The funny thing is I went through CSM training and I never really had my eyes focused on Kanban and the power of it until you began sharing it with me. And I used Kanban to write 12 different publications, books, comics, ridiculous. It was right there in my face consistently, and the stream just kept on going. So I attribute a lot of my agile hungriness or hunger to what you started, because it's very easy to go through training and think, well, I don't know when I'm going to get the chance to use this. But like you said, it's easy, right?
Just do it, even if it's in your personal life, or help you to organize the work that you're doing at work, even your personal work at work. Just start doing it, right? And it's really not that difficult.
That's a great point, Roy, because I know some folks who feel, well, I don't have agile experience. How am I going to pass the exam? Just start putting in the work of being agile. Right? Like Roy said, start using it instead of doing the laborious and nothing on Microsoft Project. I'm now sounding quite critical of what I grew up with, right?
Microsoft Project is a great tool, so we're not knocking it, but from an agile perspective, it's the wrong tool, right?
And it's, to be honest, it's a lot of times it is the wrong tool. If you just switch to Jira or even just Trello or even just Kanban, straight up personal Kanban, you'll find it a lot more effective. And I've got Jira right here on my phone. It's become that integral to just have that pipeline and that mindedness going. So let's go back in our time machine, Roy, to when this stuff all started, the agile evolution. Do you want to just talk to some of the key points that you recognize in this list of events?
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to remember where it all started. Everyone thinks that Agile started in the IT space, and kind of it did, right? That's where it started to formalize anyway. But if you really want to look back in history, it actually started with manufacturing. Toyota Production System, that's where the lean concepts, and Agile is based on lean. We really need to make sure that we understand that. For a long time, Agile and lean were considered separate things. Agile is based on lean. So that's where all this stuff started. That's where Kanban started. And it wasn't until much later it was brought into the knowledge space, but Kanban started all the way back in Toyota Production System in a manufacturing space. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit. Let's move to 1995, where Scrum. That's where Scrum started to take hold. And this is where our friends Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber, where they started to formalize the concept around Scrum, and they formed the first Scrum team. That is not when Agile started. That was just the first Scrum team that was started. Agile and iterative approaches have been going on for quite a long time. Now, 1996, right around that time, two other kinds of practices came up. So let's very briefly talk about Crystal Clear. And I want to talk about Crystal Clear for a minute because, Phil, sometimes you may see a question on the ACP about Crystal. Now, this is not a process that anyone uses anymore, but it is sometimes on the exam. So it's an easy practice. It was basically a way of determining the risk complexity of a project. Very, very simple process, but you should probably know just a little bit about it anyway, from a history perspective. Extreme programming is something that we still use today, maybe not as an entire practice, because it kind of lost favor in the late 90s. Those that were implementing it were doing really great engineering practices that came from XP, but they weren't doing a good job with the project management stuff. So we had some fantastic engineering, great products that blew past their deadlines all over the place, right? So they were focused on quality and engineering and not so much on deadlines, which guess what? You still got deadlines. You got to focus that stuff. 2001 was another major event, and that was the Agile Manifesto, formation of the Scrum Alliance as well. And the manifesto, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, is a key artifact in the Agile community. Now, 2001 is when Agile really started to form. As you started seeing more frequent use of the word, the community started forming, and that's where it all started to evolve. Declaration of Interdependence is actually a minor event, but it's an important one to remember because guess what? That also may be on the exam. The Declaration of Interdependence is basically saying that we are not going to rely on a single set of practices or processes or behaviors. We are going to use what makes the most sense. We are going to be independent, and all of these processes and each other, we are interdependent, right? So it was an important moment, at least from a history perspective. That's kind of the timeline. A lot has happened since then. Kanban was introduced sometime after 2001, and some other things happened as well to more hybrid approaches that happened maybe in the last 5-10 years. That started becoming more and more popular. So the things, Agile hasn't stopped here, right? And that's an important thing, is Agile has continued to evolve throughout, and it should. I hope in 10 years it looks something completely different than what it does today. That's what Agile should be, right, Phil?
Yeah, that's true, Roy. And let's talk about the project you were part of in 2017, where they try to use a predictive approach to put together a book of an agile nature. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, this one's actually really, really funny. So I was involved in the Agile Practice Guide, in the creation of the Agile Practice Guide. Now, I was not a content provider, so I don't want to make it sound bigger than it actually was. I was just involved in some of the process and ran a couple of retrospectives for those people that were providing the content. And what I found really funny is some of the folks that were PMI people from the PMI organization, they thought that it'd be a great idea when they're writing this Agile book to use waterfall to plan how to write an Agile book. And to me, that was a huge indicator, right? It was very painfully obvious that PMI at that stage truly did not understand what Agile was about. Why would you use waterfall to write a book on Agile? Makes no sense. And it was kind of funny to watch the faces of those Agile practitioners at the time. These are some pretty big names in the community. They just kind of blanched. It was like, are you kidding me? What the heck is this? So don't do that, right? If you're going to do Agile, use Agile, right? It was fun.
Oh my gosh, hilarious, hilarious. PMI have definitely come a long way. And in the journey towards ACP, they have quite a robust assortment of arguments and reasons why. And they talk about demonstrating your Agile team experience. If you've used Agile approaches remotely, you've got good collaboration skills, and the PMI-ACP is a good choice. But you folks even figured it out without going to their website, that Agile is the way forward. Whether you work with teams that are Agile, whether your organization is a laggard, whether they're ahead, you need to be in this class. So I'm really excited that you're here. In the research PMI did, they realized that organizations increasingly embrace Agile, and they found from their survey that a full 71% of organizations report using Agile approaches for their projects, sometimes, often, or always. Think about that. So if it hasn't hit you yet, it will hit you. And I'm really excited to hear Ibrahim talking about how his firm has been using Agile. Just as he's learned, he's taken it, he's running with it, and he's going. And it just makes sense to be Agile, because if you're not, you're going to be left behind, right?
Absolutely.
It's not about
I find it interesting. I just wanted to bring up one quick point that was from the previous slide about the 71%. I saw a recent survey, a recent poll that number has now increased to 82%.
Wow.
So that's huge. That's almost every organization today is using some form. You got to know this stuff, right? Wow. If you want to have a career path, you have got to know this stuff, and you have to know when to apply it and how to apply it.
Absolutely. So Roy, let's jump into this. Why Agile? I think the 82% number that you've shared is just mind-blowing, because it just shows you if you're not being Agile, you're going to be left behind.
Yeah, there is no question. And I think the key is that it's not about all in Agile. It's about applying Agile principles, some practices where they're appropriate, but it's the values and principles that we're trying to encourage. And that kind of brings us to this slide as well. Why? What's the point? It's not just because everyone's doing it. That's a compelling reason to do it from a career perspective. But why do it? What value are we getting as organizations, as human beings? Why are we getting, what kind of value are we getting out of this? Now, a lot of organizations go down the path of doing Agile because everyone else is doing it, or they're looking for faster, better, cheaper. That's terrible reasons for us to be doing Agile. Do Agile because it enables adaptability. It enables a better environment so we can be adaptable. So it's not about going fastest. It's not being, the highest quality. It's about being able to adapt very, very quickly. Now, and let's phrase it this way. So many waterfall projects today, they're not like they used to be, where there used to be 2 years, 5 years kind of projects. There's still some of those that still exist, of course, but most waterfall projects have realized, even in waterfall, let's make things smaller, right? Let's do smaller pieces. So this isn't, you can't do 2-year projects anymore. Well, very many people are doing those. But when you have a waterfall project, you are very tied to the triple constraints, which we're going to be talking about today. On time, on budget, all scope. You're tied to those things. But what if that scope is no longer relevant? Things change so fast today that it's no longer, you can't do 2-year projects. You can't do 6-month projects, right? It's getting smaller and smaller. Everything is moving so fast. Technology has enabled that. And we get asked that a lot as well, is, well, why Agile? Why now, right? Why can't we? What's changed to make Agile so much more important? Well, technology, industry, people, society, government. What else can you say? Everything has changed, which makes Agile now a requirement. You have to be more flexible. You have to be able to change directions a lot faster. A long time ago, technology wasn't up to date. You were doing mainframe kind of programming. Making little changes were really expensive and really difficult. So waterfall worked in that environment. That's not the case anymore, right, Phil?
Absolutely, Roy. And to that end, PMI had more research they did in 2017, 2018. And on the screen, it just shows you that organizations with high agility do better than organizations with low agility, regardless the method being used. So when we talk about Agile, it's a state of mind, right? Those organizations with a high agility, they do better even on predictive projects compared to those that are not Agile. That's the summary. And I have a more extensive recording about this that you can find in the primer on the learning system. But for now, we're going to jump into the 7 ACP domains. The very first domain is Agile principles and mindset. Roy is going to take you through all of those Agile manifesto values and principles. Speaking of value, we have value-driven delivery, which is focusing on value in everything you do in the world of Agile. Stakeholder engagement, keeping your stakeholder engaged. We'll take a look at that as well at the appropriate time. Team performance, getting your team to optimum performance. Adaptive planning, not just staying dogged and rugged in one plan, but being able to adapt as needed. Problem detection and resolution will be covered as well, and continuous improvement. The breakdown of all of these on the exam is as follows. You can see that 20% is value-driven delivery, and that's what we're covering today. The intent is over 4 weeks to cover 2 domains every week, or close to it. So our aim for today, could we call that our sprint goal? Our sprint goal is to cover domains 1 and 2 for today, Agile principles and mindset and value-driven delivery. Roy, any comments on these? Any manholes we should be on the lookout for based on your experience training this thing?
Yeah, so I think one to focus on that I think is very important is the concepts of value-driven delivery, because that is very foreign to traditional PMI, PMP, although obviously over the past couple of years, that's dramatically changed. But this is a really, really different concept from traditional predictive approaches. Now, an area that I would encourage you to focus on from an ACP perspective in taking the exam, look at problem detection and resolution. That's a big one. And what I would also suggest is, if you want to be good at the rest of these, if you really want to get the core, focus on the principles and the mindset, because when the PMI asks you certain questions, if you can go back to the manifesto and think about the behaviors, think about the root of some of these things, it will help you answer when you don't know the answers, right? So just focus on the values, the principles, value delivery, problem detection is a big one as well. Focus on those kinds of things, and it's going to make answering the questions a lot easier for you.
Lovely. Thank you, Roy. We'll come back to this in the future. Moving on, the study aids. Right now, we recommend the Agile Practice Guide, which you all know. If you don't have it, download it when you become a member of the PMI. The course handout, which you have, the Agile Principle book, you have a draft copy of what Roy and I are currently working on, the Scrum Guide, the Agile Alliance website, the Praizion Learning System, the ACP content outline, Agile for Practitioner videos, which you'll find on the LMS eventually, and incremental Agile tests that we have all throughout. Roy has put together a 90-question test. We're beefing that up to 120 so that you can take that and really pound on it for 3 hours, however long the exam is. I believe it's 3 hours.
Yes.
And that will be our final mock exam. And then all throughout the course on Wednesdays, we're going to review a total of 50 multiple choice questions. Every Wednesday, we'll cover at least 12 thereabouts. We'll also review 50 true or false questions, even though those aren't on the exam, but it's low-hanging fruit to find your weak areas. You'll be amazed at what true or false can teach you, And then the key thing is to stay on course and be motivated, fix a date in your head. I like Chandra thinking about the end game, which is treating herself to something good for getting certified. Wow, that is just brilliant to have that vision. So I want to encourage you to begin to have that vision right away. All right. In our next video, we're going to be going into the first domain in this journey.